Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be looking at lesson 1-3, which is on multiplying and dividing integers, again, positive and negative numbers. So get your iNotebooks out and let's get started. Okay, got my iNotebook. You're also going to need a foldable that looks like this. Again, you can get this on Canvas if you are at home. You can print it out. You can also come to school and find me. If you don't have a printer, you're more than welcome to draw it on separate paper and kind of create your own. Give me 2 seconds to get a pair of scissors. Apologize for that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut mine out. Notice that there are addition and subtraction rules on here. We're going to add those in. I know we talked about combining, not adding and subtracting. And so we're going to be changing this up a little bit because we're not going to be talking about adding and subtracting. We're going to be talking about combining. Once you have it cut out, then we are going to cut on the dark lines in between to the middle section, but we're not going to cut all the way through, so they become little door flats. And then once we get our cutting done, I'm going to set it aside for right now. And this is going to be lesson 1-3. And it is on multiplying and dividing integers. All right, so, well, let's try that again. We'll put it up here. Lesson 1-3, multiplying Okay, now we're going to break the tape rule and we're going to do one great big long piece of tape so that this left side gets taped down in one big piece. Now I got a little too big because it actually went off the page and I didn't mean to do that. Okay. So let's start with the adding and subtracting. And remember, we're going to take the adding and subtracting out and we're going to write combining. We are mature math students, combining. I can spell today. I'm a math teacher, not a spelling teacher. So when we open these two up, we're going to open them up together. Get rid of this guy up here. Okay. And we are going to write what we learned on the last lesson where we said if we have 4 and a -2, remember we're going to box our numbers. And we're going to have 4 positives. And we're going to have 2 negatives. And we're going to look for our 0 pair. And remember that goes away because it doesn't have a value. And so our answer is what is left over, which is +2. But then what happens if we have like a -3 - 4? So again, we box our numbers and we realize this is not a subtraction problem. It's really a bunch of negatives. So it's 3 negatives and then 4 negatives. We notice that there are no 0 pairs here. There are just a bunch of negatives all together. So we add them together and we get -7. There are 7 negatives. And then the weird one then was when we have a negative. And when this happens, we have to make this a great big positive. So this becomes -4 and a +8. And then we can do our reds and our blacks. And we see that there are 4 0 pairs that have a value of 0. And so our answer then is a +4. So that's what we learned in the previous lesson. So I went through that pretty quick because we already knew those. Okay, so let's talk about multiplication and division. These two have the same rules. Multiplication and division have the same rules. So we're going to put those two together. So we're going to open these up. Notice that I kind of put a line in between the two. So that we could kind of notice the difference. So these are the rules that you need to know. If you have a positive times a positive, you will always get a positive. If you have a positive times a negative, you will always get a negative. Oh. If you have a negative times a negative, you will always get a positive. And these will always work. They will also work with division. So we also are, again, we're talking about maturing our math. So we are rarely going to see this symbol anymore. From now on, the majority of the time, you are going to see all of your fractions are going to be, all of your division symbols are going to be as fractions. So if you have a fraction that is a negative and a positive, your answer will always be a negative. If your fraction is a negative and a negative, your answer will always be a positive. If it's a positive and a positive, it's always a positive. Now pay attention, because if you have 1, 2, you get a positive. If you have 1, 2, you get a positive. If you have 1, 2, you get a positive. So if your signs are an even, so if you count the number of negative signs, count the number of negative signs. If they are an even number, so the signs, I'm not talking about the numbers, the signs. If you have an even number of negative signs, your answer will always be positive. If you have an odd number, so 1, 3, 5, 7, an odd number of negative signs, your answer will always be negative. So that will always happen. So, for example, if you have -4 times 2, well, 4 times 2 is 8, right? And I have 1 negative sign. Well, 1 is odd, right? So an odd number of negative signs means my answer will be negative. So the answer is -8. If I have -1 times 4 times -1, well, 1 times 4 times 1 is just 4. But I have 1, 2 negative signs. Well, 2 is an even number. So I have an even number of negative signs. So my answer will be positive. Well, what if I'm dividing? So let's say I have -3 divided by -1. Well, -3 divided by 3 divided by 1 is just 3. And I have a negative divided by a negative, so I have 2 of them. So 2 is an even number. So my answer will be positive. So what if I have 10 divided by -2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. I only have one negative sign. 1 is an odd number, so my answer will be negative. It's like that all the time. So if you have multiple ones, so let's say we have -1 times -2 times -3 times -5. Well, 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. And 6 times 5 is 30. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 negative signs. 4 is an even number, so my answer is positive. It's like this all the time in multiplication and division. Remember, if you are doing adding and subtracting, combining, we have to go back to the 0 pairs. So they are different. Well, that is all, my friends, for lesson 1-3. If you have any questions or concerns, like always, please feel free to come and see me. I would be more than happy to help you out some more. And we'll do some more practice in class. Otherwise, we will see you next time.